Well, hello there. Short talk in the trailer with an old guy. We wonder who that would be. Now, don't we? Not much of a mystery there. I'm old and getting cranky. I guess that's the sign you could tell you got an old guy in your head. You start getting cranky and, groping about stuff. Oh, by golly. Today I went out and with my guy Marty, and we did a water heater and a PRV and changed out a cartridge. And then we got into this weird idea over there. There's a place called Good Samaritan, which is a retirement place for old folks. It's kind of upscale. It's not like super deluxe, but it's pretty darn nice. I'm guessing to live in an apartment there, you'd have to cough up 3 or 4 grand a month. I'm just making that up. But anyway, this guy and his wife want to cram a washer-dryer unit into their closet. I have no idea why, but right beside it is the water heater in the same closet, and beside that is a floor sink. Now, if you've worked in a restaurant, you know what a floor sink is. There's an indirect waste under a 2 or 3 compartment sink, and it dumps over, and there's a square sink. It makes up flush to the floor. It's about 8 inches deep, 6 inches deep, kind of 10 by 10. And it has the same kind of finish as an enamel finish as a kitchen sink would have, like white. So it's an iron sink recessed into the floor. And so I thought, well, we got over there. You want to run a clothes washer here? Really? So I didn't want to get into cutting into the wall and cutting into the iron, because I told Marty, I said, what are the odds? What are the odds, after all, of a cast iron drain being clear? They're just not there. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up outside the wall. We're not even going to cut in. We're just going to strap all this stuff to the wall, the PVC and the water lines, and just dump them into a floor sink, which is right beside the water heater, which is the weirdest thing ever. But never mind that. My friend Jason at work invited me over to a men's group tonight, and of course, well, I got home and I stopped at the grocery, had stopped at the hardware, stopped at the warehouse, and I got here and it was like a few minutes after 6, and I just thought, I am done with driving. I want to stay home. So getting all lazy and stuff, sitting here watching the algorithm, the YouTube thing going by, and I thought I'd kind of comment some. It seems to me that there's things that are popping up on our little radar here that ought to give us pause. I mean, as Americans, as voters, as human beings, as sentient creatures, however it works out. And here's an example. I was listening to an interview or discussion, I guess you'd call it, between Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson, having to do with whether DJT is very likely in the future to be assassinated. And they were discussing this topic as a kind of a naturally occurring idea that no one would really have any problems with, and let's just kind of work it on out, see how this works as a concept. And, neither one of them guys are for it. I'm not trying to throw rocks at them. But the fact that the discussion is on the floor, that's not a good sign. We shouldn't be talking about whacking ex-U.S. presidents because certain powers that be can't stand the idea of him being in office again because he'd come after them. This is wild, man. The president of Serbia, and I can't remember his name, it was a interview, or a partial interview really, by John Nolan on the Christian what's it called, the Inspired Tribe. John Nolan had it was like an hour-long thing, and I didn't really watch it to the end. I watched probably 2/3 of it. But at any rate, the president of Serbia is talking about that we're coming very close to the end of a period of time where it could be a workable option to have a peace deal signed. And as far as I understand it, Mr. Putin sent a deal recommendation to the West, and it was shot down. So those in the West who are in power now and are presiding over the destruction of their own nations, their own currencies, their own borders, are now in the process of stirring up a war with Russia, which they cannot match strength. They cannot match the strength of the Russians. If they really want to fight the Russians, they're going to lose. And then these same lunatics are the same guys, and we've talked about this before, that there's a cadre of people out here apparently who were not aware of the world in 1963 or 4 or 5, when the world was on edge, that maybe at any time we might, as they used to say, hit the button. Someone in the White House had a box, ostensibly, and it was a button. They pushed the button, and when you push the button, what that means is you launch an atomic nuclear holocaust upon your enemy. You unleash everything on him, you throw him into the fire. And it was called mutually assured destruction. MAD was what they used to call it back in the 60s and 70s. Now, this idea was later on rejected by some and thrown out as really kind of crazy, as a kind of a historical nonsense burger. But the reality is it actually made sense. If you want to launch at me, I will launch at you, and both of our civilizations will burn. You want to go there? And it held it off. It was a distance. It was a tension. And people used to, there was old videos and old TV things in the 50s especially. Now, by the time the 60s rolled around, I knew where the local air raid shelters were, and they had an atomic sign over it that you can hide under here during an atomic weapon attack. In Albuquerque, where I grew up in the 60s, there was an air raid siren. I can't remember what it was, maybe the second Thursday of every month or something like that, kind of around noonish. The air raid sirens would swing into action everywhere in Albuquerque. You'd hear this thing all over the city. And they do that for about 10 minutes. They were just testing it to see if it worked. Now, why would you want one of those? Why would you want that in your house? Why would you want that in your city? It was in case the Russians launched an atomic nuclear provocation. Because Kirtland Air Force Base, Manzano Air Force Base, and Sandia National Labs is all in Albuquerque. That's a hot topic for nuclear assassination. Well, that was the world I grew up in. And I thought we were kind of done with that. And these new lunatics, these new Democrats, and even Republicrats, the Uniparty, these neocons, they all are just crazy. They just want to go out and have a war. Let's fight somebody. Because they're trying to take your attention away from their serial failures and abject and disgusting violation of their own oaths in terms of what they've done to this nation. Look at what's happening at the southern border. Forget about the southern border. You can probably fly in here without a passport. You can probably walk across the Canadian border. I don't know. But the thing is that the whole thing is getting really crazy. Like batshit crazy. And so, as I was thinking about this today some, I thought, well, this is a really weird topic. It's really what I talk about all the time, isn't it? The weird topic. But I got to thinking that in terms of this, where the Christian world is right now, as far as I'm able to gather, and it's not like I got my ear to the ground perfectly and understand what the Christian consensus in the universe is just now. But what I mean is that I'm not hearing anything from the church out there. I'm not hearing any church leaders. I'm not hearing any church denominations. I'm not hearing anybody rising up and saying, hell no, you twisted bastards, you lying sons of who with the 4-letter words. We will not fight Russia on your behalf. We will not welcome and host millions and millions of criminals, aliens coming across our border. Not on my watch. And the people have to say no, and not only no, but hell no. But it ain't happening. And if it did happen, it ought to happen in the church. And so, in a sense, the church is partly responsible by virtue of not having stuck her foot in the door and said, no. She ain't got the backbone for that. Not anymore. She used to once upon a time. There used to be some very fierce Christians, some very bold Christians, some very bright and shining Christians. Well, We ain't got many of them. And I'm pretty sure I ain't one. But I can do what I can, and what I want to do is I want to talk to you. I want to let you know that you're not alone. If you're looking at this world right now and thinking, man, this is absolutely nuts, you're right. If you're looking at our so-called leadership and thinking, these corrupt, perverted, psychotic bastards, and they want my vote? I think not. If you're thinking things like that, you're on the right page. Be patient. Be strong. Remember, there's so much of the word, and especially you'll see this in the Psalms, of the idea of waiting upon the Lord, waiting patiently. I have been weaned like a small child, and I wait patiently for my master to show and to lead and to guide us. And I think the leadership and the guidance that we are missing here in the church, at least the church I attend, is that it's like there's a weird divorce, probably 501c3 if you'd like to know. There's a weird divorce between politics and religion in the United States, which is maintained by the political side, but I don't know why the religious side bothers to maintain it. This so-called wall of division between church and state. Where'd that idea come from? Well, it's actually it has to do with letters that Jefferson wrote. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not in the founding documents. You won't find it there. But what you'll find it is in letters by Jefferson to friends and, fellow thinkers and co-conspirators, whatever he was doing at the time. But the idea was that the church cannot have a voice in the nation. It's a separate estate. It's like a different world. It's like an encapsulated universe, and there is no boundary crossing between those two bubbles. That's what these people on the left in the political state want the church to be, because they want the church silent. Now, the church never volunteered for that. That's not her job description. That's not who she was told to be by her master. But the church acts like it is, right? The church, when it comes to political stuff, is mum. Has nothing to say. Zip the lip. And that's the problem. There's more than one of you, and there's more than one of me out here, but who are we after all? We're the small people. We're the nobodies of this world. We're the people who just work for a living and just make things go. We're the ones who show up on time. We're the ones who pay attention. We're the ones who are always having to pay taxes of one kind and then another. But the thing is that in our view as humans, our view is that the king who is coming has already come. He came and visited this world. He walked this world in his own life. And in that, he sampled what human beings are like. He faced the most absurd, horrible, violent, despicable death that a man could possibly endure. And he did it with silence and dignity and honor and faithfulness to the Father. Never once did he threaten his enemies. Never once did he throw a curse back at them. He suffered as a lamb who is sheared quietly, without a word. And there's a thing here in our lives, and nobody wants to hear it, but he's calling us to suffer. That's what he says. If you don't take your cross and follow me, I don't know who you are. The centrality is that if they treated him badly, think of what they'll do to you. He says, if they've done, he's speaking to the women who are weeping as he's carrying this cross up the hill, and he says, if this is what they do in a green tree, what will they do when it's dry? And by golly, it's dried up, hasn't it? And so the idea is that, this is how they treated our master. This is how they treated their sovereign Lord and King. How are they going to treat someone like you or someone like me who just witnesses to the king and says, yeah, he's the real king and we're wrong, not him? They'll hate us too. And we've got to be willing to accept that and welcome it. He says, kick up your heels on the day that you're hated and despised and murdered for my sake. Can't get much better than that. Man, he's the real deal. He's the one who comes in when sorrow and weeping finally end simply out of exhaustion. And he puts the pieces back together. So, I just wanted to say, here's a word of encouragement for you. Look around you, the world's falling to pieces. It's just, frankly, batshit crazy. And it's getting worse all the time. You have the answer. The answer is, he has come to you. He has spoken peace to you. And he's brokered a new deal, you might call it, the covenant of grace, wherein his glorious righteousness, not only does he cancel the sin against us, but get this is weird. This is really weird. He treats us as if we had been the loyal son all along, that we had a glorious and righteous track record. And frankly, I had a real problem with that as a young Christian, I mean, for about 20 years. Because I kept saying, hey man, look, I'm here to rat out myself. If you think I'm the righteous one, you're screwed up, man. Go back, check your records. What's wrong with you? How could you be so blind? I tell you, I am not the righteous one. I wanted to enforce that in case he was confused on the matter. But the idea is that it's a radical change. It's a transference of life and power and excellence and hope and reality and just the shape of lively involvement with him. And so I just want to end this little video today, just here to chit and chat with you. When you hear about Donald J. Trump in danger because he might be, assassinated, pray. When you realize that the lunatics and perverts and psychotics who are supposedly our leaders are not only in the middle of trying to start a global war having to do with atomic weapons, not only in one place, but in 3 places simultaneously: Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The U.S. ain't up for that. A 3-fronted global war? I don't think so. And so what the U.S. is all about is projecting power. Think of a huge aircraft carrier with lots of rockets and long-range missiles and fighter planes coming in overhead, but they can't control the ground. There, the Russians know what to do. And you can't win a war simply with projecting power. You have to control the turf. The Russians know that. We've somehow forgotten. Well, anyhow, looking back over the years, looking back over the time that you've lived here on Earth, has anything really ever made sense? I mean, tremendously well about the way this world works? I don't think so. So this is getting to the point where it's chaotically bad. It's demonically enhanced, or or dehanced, I guess. It's demonically, polluted. And we who are believers are to be the ones who are standing and declaring the truth in the midst of this insanity. He reigns, he rules, and he loves, and there's no one better than him. And when the push comes to the ugly and the great judgment day comes, we just say the truth. I don't want anything. I don't want anything out of this world. I don't want anything out of my old life. I just want to be with him. I just want to hear his words. I just want to see his face. That's all that matters. Know then that you're on the right track. Walk in that path, walk in that route, and be confident. He guides us by his Spirit, and he knows what he's all about. He's bringing us to a good end, a real good end, the best end possible under the circumstances. Consider how twisted things are. So buck up. You're on the right side. You're on the winning side. And when you think about it at night, go to sleep at peace, knowing that the King of the universe never sleeps, and he watches over you as you rest. Good night. Have a blessed morning. Why not? Didn't cost me nothing.